Welcome back to the Introducing Elite Specializations series. We're kicking off this time with Berserker, that's the heavy armor. And for a pretty nice reason, that's that in the past 2 weeks or so, here in 2019, the devs just revamped the way that this works. It came out with Heart of Thorns, existed in a certain way for many years, and it's just changed. They've revamped several traits, the way that its profession mechanic works. It's been really fun, and I can't think of a better time to run on in with it. So we've got a couple of things to get through. First of all, let's talk a bit about the name. Whereas with many of the other elite specialization, there's quite a lot of clarity as to what someone's talking about when they refer to it. You know, if I say scrap or if I say druid in the last episode we did, you know what I mean. Berserker's a funny one, in that within Guild Wars 2, before Heart of Thorns came out, there already was a type of gear called Berserker gear. And Berserker gear, through all the years of Guild Wars 2, has been one of the best gear types by a long way that everyone runs. You could have quit Guild Wars 2 in 2013. If you logged in now, in 2019, all the gear you had, if it was Berserker, is still relevant and worthwhile for all the content that you play. So people talk about Berserker's stuff all the time, Berserker's build. That's not actually the same always as the elite specialization, the Berserker. And I find it interesting that the devs named this specialization as such, because it seems like it could be quite confusing. It's actually not in the end, and that means that all the different names for various stat sets they've created over the years could also become elite specializations later. Like we could have a Cavalier elite specialization, for example, or a Sentinel elite specialization, and so on. So yeah, we're looking at the Berserker Elite Spec, which just so happens to also do very well on Berserker gear. So the general idea of this is it's damage oriented. While the Tempest was more supporty and the Druid was more supporty, though they had capacity to do other things, Berserker really was about bringing the pain. And in both physical damage and in condition damage, depending on what point you've been playing Guild Wars 2 over the years, you might have found you'd be running condition builds, or you might find you've been running power builds. Also obviously depends on the format. I personally adore Berserker gameplay when it comes to power oriented stuff, but I'll give you a bit of a show of both ends of the spectrum here in this video. It's all about hitting things and hitting them hard while vulnerable yourself. So let's go through the new items that have been added to the game with the Berserker. First of all are the Berserker runes. You'll see I've actually got slotted here, and just as I mentioned that there's condition damage and power in the elite spec, the runes reflect that. They're condition damage, power, condition damage, power, condition damage, and then a flat modifier of 5% to both damage and condition damage at the same time. And so on this example, I actually think the devs have done quite well in making a rune that both reflects the spirit of the elite specialization it represents and actually gets around. These are quite expensive runes at the moment because they are worthwhile on certain builds. So those are Berserker runes, and they're generally quite complementary to any kind of very aggressive, damage-oriented sets. Then also, of course, we do have the particular gear. So the headpiece that we're wearing right now, this is the Berserker's helm you get while unlocking Berserker as you play through the Heart of Thorns expansion. I've never really liked it that much, honestly. In the pre-release information for the Berserker, the developers were actually showing a Norn in all the promotional material, and it feels like quite a Norny helmet. I don't often wear it. But then also, you do, of course, then have the special elite specialization weapon. The Berserker gets access to the torch, which I'll talk about in a second, and here's the skin. It's called Wild Abandon, and again, you'll notice it's actually quite Norny. You've got the spirits of the wild on there, or at least 3 of them. You've got wolf, you've got bear, and, well, maybe not the spirits. Is that a lion, the last one? Anyway, it's pretty nice. There's nothing in lore that explicitly says Berserkers are directly related to the Norn. In fact, as far as Heart of Thorn is concerned, they didn't do much lore with the elite specializations. That's something they improved on much more with the later expansion, Path of Fire. But, so yeah, that's the gear you get. And for this video, we will be wearing it. I've equipped us in some just nice, fiery-looking stuff. This isn't actually technically Heart of Thorns armor this time. I've shown you Heart of Thorns gear the whole way through. But it's some gem store stuff that came out shortly before Heart of Thorns, so it's sort of similar. As for the rest of the gear, we're going to be using Chuck weapons, which are Heart of Thorns things. And as a warrior, let's just remind ourselves, one of the main defining points of being a warrior is that you get access to tons of weapons, right? More than any other class in the game. You are a master of using lots of different weapons. The elite specialization unlocks a new one, that's the torch, but then the actual mechanic for this elite specialization goes back and updates all your other weapons. So while with the Reaper, really, we just had Greatsword to talk about, and while with the Tempest, we just had Warhorn, for the Berserker video, we're going to be looking at all of the weapons because they all get new skills, and that's very much in the spirit of what Warrior is all about, and for that, we'll be showing off some more Heart of Thorns gear as we go through. So that's about it as far as the items are concerned. I guess we'll jump on now into the torch itself and have a little bit of a look. So while the specialization itself seems to be split both Condi and power possibilities, the weapon they went with is a condition weapon, which I think does give it a little bit more of a condition slant in some ways. Going back to the rune, you'll see that there is actually a bit more condition damage than there is power on the rune, so it feels like the devs were edging a bit more towards that, possibly because before Heart of Thorns came out, power was really one of the only main ways to go on Warrior, so they wanted to give a little bit of that new avenue on there. And so the torch ends up quite condition-oriented. Obviously, there were torches in the game before the Berserker, and many of them involved burn damage. Well, this one does too. We only get 2 abilities, but as we see with many of the elite specializations in Heart of Thorns, they're really layered, quite condensed skills that do a lot of different stuff. So let's roll through. First of all, we have Blaze Breaker. Which, by the way, might be a reference to a fighting game or something. Many of the traits in this specialization are references to fighting games and stuff I don't fully understand. I'm not going to be able to pull them all out for you all, but I'm sure down in the comments people will list them. That might be something fun to do as we go. But so we've got Blaze Breaker. Smash your torch into the ground, creating a deadly shockwave that conditions foes. So this is actually quite simple. It's the 5 that does a hell of a lot more stuff. But here, so if we have a look, this is the animation. We smash out a cascading wave of death in front of us. This cascading idea was something that crept into a lot of the Heart of Thorns stuff. Abilities that move away and have multiple hitboxes as they go. So I'll do this again, another Blaze Breaker in front of us. And so you'll see it's a little bit delayed before it gets to its destination, but it actually is somewhat of a range skill for you, and that will be very familiar to any ranger players who like to use their skill 4 to throw their torch at people. This thing is 5 separate strikes. It can hit the same person multiple times if they're running through it, I believe. You know, if you get that perfect lineup as they're trying to flee from you. And each strike will do flat damage in a good amount. You'll see on the tooltip there, it's actually quite high. Also, burning and cripple. The cripple being really good because then you're going to be able to catch up and swing your sword and sort of beat the crap out of them. So that's Blaze Breaker. I'll also note here that it will hit 3 different targets at once. So it's a nice thing to open a fight with. It's a nice thing to end a fight with. And has pretty long-lasting burn on it. Let's look at the much more fun one here. Flames of War. Now, you'll notice I've got us comboed with a sword here, and that's for a very specific reason. Sword combos really well with torch offhand. Sword itself, this is just core warrior stuff, has that kind of hybrid condition damage powery thing on it, right? In fact, quite recently they updated some of the sword abilities to have even more bleeds on them, like Final Thrust here. And, well, you'll see why it combos even better, because Flames of War is to cleanse conditions from yourself the second you activate. Now, that's 2 conditions. That's nice because its own condition removal was something Warrior kind of struggled with for a long time. It removes 2 conditions from yourself, and then you become a mobile fire field that burns nearby foes. When the field expires, it explodes, damaging foes and burning them again. Right, so you can see this is just such a condensed skill. It's doing like 4 distinct things here right now. There's a ton of different scenarios where you might like to cast this and use it. So, first of all, the mobile field, we kind of had a bit of experience of on the Tempest video, if you've seen that. When we're overloading fire, we become a fire field that we can walk around as. And that's the same here. So let's demonstrate it. We saw flames into the ground, and as we walk around, you see for quite a long period of time, we do have this ring of fire that follows us as we move. So enemies standing in that will just be continually burned, and then as it explodes at the end, it's another big packet of burn. This is a really fun skill as far as the competitive modes are concerned. It's one of those really nice telegraphs we see on the Chronomancer Shield 4. You have one of these where players know to dodge right as the field ends and watch for this final explosion. You kind of get used to the timing. But the fact it's a mobile fire field is great, not just because it's pulsing out burning, but it can augment your other skills too, such as Savage Leap on the sword. So I'm going to keep coming back to this combo as this video goes along, but obviously Savage Leap is a skill that will jump us forwards, and it's a leap. So if we use our 5, and then we use our 2, Well, we're going to give ourselves fire aura as we do that. We're going to be able to close the gap, get in and get that extra value off of our Flames of War, keeping close to people. And the fire aura has an interesting synergy with one of the traits we'll be looking at later. So it's really quite fun. And yeah, that's your torch. That's how that works. And I don't really think there's too much more to say about it here. You can just imagine all the different places where we might like to use it. How we might support our allies by being a mobile fire field and then producing a blast for them or something. So yeah, alright, now let's go have a look at how all the other weapons have changed. And we're going to do that by looking at our initial trait. So here's the Berserker line. And the very first slot here you'll see is called Primal Rage. And it has a very simple description. It simply says, gain access to Berserk mode and Primal bursts. And now on the tooltip, if you look, it's listed a ton of skills with skill tooltips. I actually really love the way the devs implemented the UI here. It's very pretty, and I think they could have done it in a lot of other places in the game. So you'll see Axe there. Obviously, our F1 burst, we normally have Eviscerate. Well, now it's become Decapitate. And you'll see that we have our Arc Divider on our Greatsword. We've got Rupturing Smash on our Hammer, Burning Shackles, and down the list we go. And so what I can also do is right-click now. And every time I right-click this trait, the secondary skill tooltip window will change to give me specific information about each of that long list of skill. So right now, you'll see the second box says Decapitate, Primal Burst, and there's a bunch of information. If I right-click again, it goes to Arc Divide. If I right-click again, it goes to Rupturing Smash, and we go all the way down. And so these are all the skills, and you can look at the tooltips here. In the video, I'm actually going to show you guys what they look like. Alright, so to demonstrate this, it's probably best if we come briefly out of the expansion to the Silverways, just at the start, where we have these training dummies, because I'm going to need to use a lot of adrenaline for this. So, yeah, let's talk about our F1. What we're going to do is come over to these training dummies and attack them, and this will start building adrenaline, as you would expect from Core Warrior. But already you'll notice things are a bit different. Right now, I have a bar of adrenaline, but I can't use it. My skill is still grayed out. On a Core Warrior, you could already use a burst, a weaker burst, but a burst nonetheless. Well, on Berserker, you can't. You have to build all the way up to the 3 tiers, so it's much more adrenaline-oriented. To even get into your fancy new mode, you need quite a lot of adrenaline, okay? So that means some of the core elements of the class, like Signet or Fury, are pretty good, because you want to get into Berserk really nice and quick, right? So, then it's different again, even still. I'm on a sword right now. I have all my adrenaline now, and I can use the skill. But you notice that's not the sword burst. And if I weapon swap over to my hammer here, that's not the hammer burst. It's something new. This is my F1 now. It's called Berserk. It will be the same for all weapons initially. And this is just a button you press to go into the Berserk mode where all your flashy stuff happens. Not only is this a button to go into the mode, but it itself is a skill too that does something immediately. So here, I'll show you what it looks like when we press the button. We rage, there's a bit of a cast time on that. We go all red, we go flaming, we get a ton of effects, and you'll notice now the skill has changed again. So there is a lot to talk about. Once you go into Berserk, you'll be Berserked for a while, and I'll talk about what exactly that means. And eventually, it runs out, and we have to rebuild our adrenaline. Not only that, though, but it has a cooldown on it, too. So you kind of, if you're building adrenaline really quickly, you can't instant Berserk again afterwards. Though there are ways around that, which we'll talk about soon. Don't worry, there's a lot of fun build craft here. So, yeah, that's the idea. Let's look at the skin itself, though, because it does do a lot of things. It changes with traits, and it can be a little bit difficult to see. So, Burst. Gain adrenaline, an attack speed boost, and access to Primal Burst skills. So, while in this mode, that's where we get this new list of skills that are written along here. So you attack 15% faster while in Berserk, which is kind of nice. It does mean that you're not reliant on quickness. That can't be stripped from you or anything. You will always just be moving that bit quicker. Then also, because it is a skill itself, you see in the tooltip, it does a bit of damage when you go in, and it's not uncommon to kill people with just the entry of this form. It does a bit of burning as you go in, so if you're condition damage, you're happy to get a bit of damage out of it. If you're power, you're happy to get a bit of damage out of it. Then you'll see in blue, it's got that we get quickness and super speed. So that's to do with our minor traits. So let's go have a look. The first minor was getting access to this skill. Then as you build the specialization, playing through the expansion, unlocking hero points, you get this. Burst of Aggression, which is actually a reference to a Guild Wars 1 skill, which is to gain a burst of speed when entering Berserk mode. Now, what this does is it gives you super speed and quickness, which is kind of funny, right? Because we already get 15% increased attack speed while we're in Berserk. Well, on top of that, you'll open with quickness that runs out really quickly, just after 3 seconds, while you can berserk for a lot longer than 3 seconds. So the 15% will last for ages, but you do get the quickness on top. The super speed is really nice as well, because it allows you to catch up with people as soon as you berserk. Basically, you're just a rampaging machine the second you go in. And then the other minor here doesn't actually augment the skill at all, but since we're looking at minors, I guess I'll go through it. Fatal Frenzy. I believe this is one of the things that references the fighting game. Berserk mode, while we're in there, will increase our power and condition damage, but, and here's an interesting drawback that the devs are now actively designing into the elite specializations, it reduces our toughness. So to go berserk is actually to be more vulnerable. So you really want to protect yourself by pressuring people and things, and keeping your enemies dead before they can hurt you too much. But 300 power is a lot of power. 300 condition damage is a lot of condition damage. And so what this means is, if you were to build like a hybrid-y kind of berserker, not that that's necessarily the best way to go through all the time, you get plus 600 on all your offensive stats. You kind of get to double dip there. But even just going for one or the other, it's really, really nice. So you get a lot of stuff here. To finish off the tooltip, you'll also notice we do get some adrenaline back from this. So this is kind of weird. We're spending 30 adrenaline, all of our adrenaline, to go into berserk mode. And then it actually does give us 10 back. So it costs us a net of 20. The reason it gives us 10 back is so that we can use our new burst skill very quickly after we've entered the form. Not only do we get all these passive buffs, but we get access to new actives too. And it wants you to be able to use those straight away. So that's why you get 10 adrenaline back. And there's a funny thing about that. We'll have a look in a second. And so, yeah, you'll see lastly that when we go berserk, by default, it lasts 15 seconds. So 15 seconds of rampaging goodness with all these benefits. And then it runs out. But there are ways of changing that I'll come to in a second. So let's look at this 10 adrenaline return, right? You'll see when we're out of berserk mode, we have to fill our 3 bars. But look what happens when we enter berserk mode. I'm going to berserk here. And now on my user interface, you'll see we just have a single bar. We actually only need 10 adrenaline now to use a burst. And a primal burst. So primal bursts are way stronger than the regular ones, usually. And they're way cheaper. They only cost us third as much. So here's the game while you're a berserker, and this is really the spirit of it. Yeah, you get all these buffs and passives, but also you're rampaging using your bursts over and over and over again, fueling your adrenaline as fast as possible and slamming them out, using one, weapon swapping, doing the next, trying to get back. And that's kind of the spirit of how it works, spamming these primal bursts out as well as you possibly can. I use the word spamming there. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean it in a, you know, you want to use this stuff fast. And so the primal bursts are really some of the big fun. And that's why you get 10 adrenaline back, because it would feel kind of lame to berserk, get kind of this relatively not great skill, right? Just a bit of damage and a tiny bit of burn, and then have to wait. I'm sure in early designs the devs probably did have it implemented that way, but the way we've known it as players is you always get your first primal burst for free. So that's berserk. Let's now look at the primal burst. I guess we'll start off with our sword. So I'll enter berserk, and what we're gonna get is Flaming Flurry. This is what it looks like. It's a lot like the regular burst, but instead now it's ranged and it's fiery. So what you'll actually do is send out these projectiles of flame and damage, and it does a lot of burning. As you can see from the tooltip there, that is 8 burning. You'll see I'm getting a bit of endurance. That's just some of my other specialization lines that you guys don't have to worry about too much there. And so it's actually 8 burning, which is a good amount. And actually, another really nice part of Flaming Flurry, I'll show you the animation again here, is while this is going on, it actually does block projectiles. So if someone's trying to shoot you, your Flaming Flurry is actually blocking and destroying all of their projectiles, which I think a lot of people don't think about. Also, each of those projectiles pierces. So if I were to do it through all my allies here, right, if I targeted this Crusader at the back, I would do 8 stacks of burning to this guy, 8 stacks of burning to this guy, and 8 stacks of burning to this guy. It would go through all of them if I lined it up properly. It's kind of a fiddly skill to get right, and it's not my favorite of the primal bursts. But there it is. Okay, so that's your sword. And you'll notice that you've got reasonable flat damage on their condition as well. It rounds the sword weapon out to now have not just bleeds, but also burning on its conditions at the same time. You'll recall, though, that the regular burst does have immobilize when we've kind of traded that off. So you don't immob anymore, but you have the range to kind of compensate. And there you have it. All right, so let's look at the next one. Let's look at Hammer, since we have this equipped. So I'll go into Berserk here. It's called Rupturing Smash, and you'll see we get a beautiful tooltip on the ground. We jump forward, we slam down, and we do a ton of CC. So now on these target dummies, you can't see that I'm doing this right now. But Rupturing Smash, as you can see on the tooltip here, is kind of an upgraded version of Earthshaker. So jump to the targeted location. We can now move a lot further. Slam our hammer down, creating a deadly chain of earthen shockwaves that immobilize and daze foes. So they use the word shockwaves in the flavor text there. It's not actually a cascade skill. I think it would be really cool if it was, but it's not. The idea, though, is it's a lot of damage. Look at that tooltip. Over 1,300 damage on there right now. You get the immob on there and daze at the same time. So while Earthshaker is a stun, this one will kind of double punt people. And because it's an immob plus a daze, it kind of works the same as a stun. You can't move or use skills, but because it's on separate effects, if someone has resistance, they'll still be dazed. If someone has stability, they'll still be immobilized. You kind of get around their defenses in a way. And that's pretty nice. Obviously, then you can start thinking about other warriors being able to break and mobilize easy, and there's all these intricacies to it. But that's the idea. It's a blast, just like regular Earthshaker is, and it's got that beautiful ground target tooltip on it. This is one I really like. Hammer on Berserker, unfortunately, I think is a little bit weak, generally speaking, and I want to see more improvements to it. But it's a fun one, and definitely something to look at. In PvE, almost anything goes, right? Next, let's look at a really fun one. Possibly my favorite. I mean, there's some really, really hot contenders here. Let's look at Rifle. So you might be already excited at the prospect of this. The regular Rifle Burst kill shot is an insane amount of damage on a long wind-up. So what is the Primal Burst one that's cheaper to cast, more regularly accessible? What have the devs done? Well, first of all, it has not got upgraded flat damage. It's not like they just made Killshot even more insane and added like a full-on sniper thing. It would take a long while for them to realize that in the Deadeye Thief specialization in a later expansion. They did make it a very cool skill, though. So the skill is now called Gun Flame, and here's what it looks like, okay? Gun Flame. We charge up. We shoot, and I can't crit these dummies, so the damage might look less impressive than it actually is. But we just smashed that dummy for over 3,400 damage on a non-crit, okay? So Gun Flame is basically an AoE kill shot. It's got some other nice quality of life on it as well, such as the fact that this one dazes too. So it's actually a stunt. So you can interrupt someone healing with the Gun Flame now and kill them with that. And it's got a little bit of burning on there. The burning, honestly, I don't think's necessary. It's like with all these bursts, the devs added a tiny bit of condies thinking, oh, you might want to do it on a condi build. You're really not going to run a Gun Flame rifle condi build. I just don't see that worth it in any sense. None of the other weapon skills have got any condition damage, and it's only a single packet of burn. The devs didn't really go very far with it. But it's a brilliant skill, and you can genuinely snipe down groups of players by gun flaming them. Very fun. The range is 1,500, so I think it's longer range than the regular kill shot. You still have to sort of kneel down and wait for a second. But don't forget, we do start off with a burst of aggression, which means we're opening with quickness, and you can quickness cast the first one. That's quite new as of the recent 2019 update to this specialization, and I wonder how much people have really played with it. So that's Gun Flame. It's a really cool one, and definitely one of my favorites. Let's look over at Mace now. Now, you might not be too impressed or excited about Mace just on the outset, but Mace is actually, back when Heart of Thorns came out, one of the most meta fun things to do in PvP game types. So the regular Mace burst is Skullcrack, a really long duration stun, like super, super long incapacitation. If someone doesn't have a stun break or something available, it was incredible. Well, the Primal burst did something really interesting. It actually made it a condition damage skill. Yeah, seriously. So it's still a CC, but now it actually lunges you forward and does a wide range of conditions. So here, I'll show you the animation here on the dummy. You see we sort of slam forwards. We can't condition damage the dummy, but when I mouse over the tooltip, look at this. It does blind, bleed, cripple, and confusion. That's right, guys. Confusion, the domain of the Mesmer, actually was added to Berserker. So the fact it offers 4 different conditions all at once was fantastic. They were great cover condies to keep your burns on, for example, as people could only accidentally get the cripple off or whatever. Also, just a brilliant quality of life on how far you actually charge forward as you slam people. Skull Grinder, it's called, and it's one of the meatiest, best skills to land. Like, I have so much memory and like happiness of slamming this into people using cool Berserker combos. This with the new Berserker Elite we'll look at in a second. Skull Grind is a super fun skill. Sadly, it's not that strong competitively these days, but the weight of smashing someone with it, I don't think I'll forget for a very long time. Really enjoyable. I'll point out as well, the cripple on this, and indeed the cripple on the torch and stuff, does have some nice synergies with Elsewhere on Warrior, where you can turn that cripple into a mob. So if you do that, you've got even more conditions all out all at once on this very quick turnaround, crack someone in the heads, and then, you know, get your torch skills out. Oh, what a fantastic skill. I do love Skull Grinder. It's one of those skills that might not look as fun or interesting on paper as something like Gunflame, but believe me, when you get used to it, and especially back when it was one of the most kingly things to run, it was a hell of a lot of fun. So, only a couple of weapons left now. Let's see what we've got. Well, longbow. So, longbow's very interesting to me for Berserker, in that it was already quite in line with the Berserker attitude. You know, it's a mix of burning and power damage on there. I remember some of the earliest conversations the devs had about warriors using longbows and how they were like big CG weapons. In fact, some of the earlier alphas of Guild Wars 2 showed some really ridiculous skill animations on this. So, it seems that if they're adding a Primal Burst to longbow, it could end up being really good, right? In that you've already got a lot of burning on this kit, and if they add more burning and the original burst is a big burn field, it could be a match made in heaven. And, well, it kind of was. Longbow Berserkers, as far as PvE is concerned, as far as playing a conditioned Berserker that does tons of damage, have always been a dreamy combo. People love this weapon for doing damage on Berserkers for many years. Obviously, that changes at any specific time you're looking at the game, but it's always been a really solid option. So let's see how it works. Well, the new skill is called Scorched Earth, and what it does is this. Now, that was kind of a poor demonstration here. I'll try and show you again. What we do is we fire these multiple fire fields out in squares that travel towards our target, somewhat cascading, and as they move out, people standing in them take immense burning. Like, the fields might look a little bit muted or whatever there, but there's a lot of burning damage that comes from those, and they can do an awful lot of damage. There's been interesting tricks in the past years, I think, where the fields would overlap and you could hit people with 2 of them at once. Interestingly, they seem to be stopping on this specific dummy, which isn't really showing the animations very well. Here, I'll cast it this way just so you guys can see. Look at this. Here you go. Much better. So you see it goes a really long way all along, and you do a lot of burn. So you can cover a vast area of terrain with Scorched Earth and get a lot of burn damage out. It does actually tick power damage as well at the same time. Much more of a PvE kind of weapon, and if you like the idea of playing a condition damage warrior, this is a definite, really strong go-to. They're fire fields, so you can use your skill 3, the, here, I'll show you. In fact, we'll cast it over here again just so you guys can see. You can use the skill 3 to blast in it, do whatever you like. You could leap in it with the sword if you had one equipped right afterwards, and have fun. So that's another big condition damage one there. And that leaves us now with just 2 more weapons. That's Greatsword and Axe, and I've saved 2 of the best in my opinion for last. These 2 had radical changes just now in 2019, and function quite differently to what many of you guys probably expect them to. I will point out there's 2 Primal Bursts I'm not showing in the video right now. They're for your underwater weapons. There are actually new ones down there if you have a look. One of them is called Wild Whirl, and the other one is called Burning Shackles. The underwater burst for Spear I actually remember really liking for Core Warrior. They're not skills I use very often. But let's take a look at these 2 terrestrial weapons here. So Greatsword and Axe. Let's start off with Axe first of all. Axe in Guild Wars 1 was the go-to spike damage weapon. It was really fun. You'd use Eviscerate on people, you'd inflict deep wounds. It was brilliant. And so Eviscerate returned in Guild Wars 2 as this massive spike strike of damage that you could use on your burst. But over the years, it has been overshadowed by other skills. Well, when Berserker came out, they added a new version of Eviscerate. They called it Decapitate. Now that too is a reference to Guild Wars 1, where Eviscerate was the non-elite version of the skill, and then the elite version of the skill was called Decapitate, that cost a ton of adrenaline to use and inflicted deep wound. So they were very much calling back to Guild Wars 1 by adding Decapitate as the primal burst. And I'm going to show you Decapitate in this video now, but Decapitate just changed a lot in the 2019 update. And that's because Decapitate, as it was originally implemented in Guild Wars 2 for the Berserker, was not that great. Basically, they did a similar thing to what we saw with Gunflame, which is that they didn't buff the damage any further, but they made it AoE and added slightly different effects on there. But that was never really worth that much. It was a slow, highly telegraphed skill that just got overshone by so many other things. I'm not saying it was impossible to kill people with Decapitate, and it was pretty fun. It was an initial strike that then sent out a shockwave that hurt people in the area. If you used it on a downstate body, both the shockwave and the initial impact would hit the person, so it would do extra damage and stuff. But the devs decided, like many players, that Decapitate wasn't that great, and it's just been changed to this new version of Decapitate that you'll see here now. So let's have a look at it. Decapitate, Primal Burst, and now, instead of being elite, we get that swing and strike style attack there. Here, I'll show you it again. We charge and we slash out in front of ourselves. We don't actually lunge towards our target. Now, it's a much more subtle animation that can go very quickly once you've got that quickness on there as soon as you've entered Berserk. It's much harder for enemies to see now, and it kind of feels like a different skill for that reason. You're not locked into like this clunky leap or whatever, but the damage on it is still very much there. Look at that, 2,800 damage it's reading there as I build just a tiny bit of might. It gives us some might as we use it, and here's the best thing. If we hit with Decapitate, it instantly recharges. So as you can see here, I've just been using the skill over and over and over again. This dummy is never going to block or blind or dodge or anything. I'm just going to be able to decapitate, 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 decapitate as long as I have the adrenaline for it. So it's this really powerful skill now that if you're able to land a couple of hits, you will grind through people like no tomorrow. And so it's got a lot more quality of life on it now with an amazingly powerful hit on it. And I do think it's a much better skill as far as 2019 is concerned. The AoE element of it is now gone. It's just down to a single target thing. I might expect a few more refinements to it as well. So if you're watching this video in 2020 or even a little bit further, maybe that's something to keep an eye out for. But that's Decapitate. And yeah, it's a fun skill. Look at that. Wow. All right, so next and last but not least, we have the Greatsword. So Greatsword's Primal Burst is called Arc Divider. The regular burst is actually an extremely strong skill that if you play a lot of Spellbreaker, you'll certainly have used an awful lot of. Even when the original Berserker came out, and for many years, Arc Divider, the Primal Burst version, was very good. But it too was changed, and is possibly the craziest of the bursts now. It's insane. I'll just show it off. Okay, ready? I'm going to stand between all three of these training dummies. We really have saved best for last. I'm going to go Berserk. And I'm going to use Arc Divider. So as you can see there, we basically become like a helicopter of death. Look at this. Where we send out 3 attacks, each doing insane damage, spiraling around ourselves that cascade out. Closer targets take more damage, and we'll eat the hit over and over and over again. And further targets may only take it once. So it's kind of like a damagey version of that Tempest Hill we were looking at in one of the previous Elite Specialization spotlights for Heart of Thorns. I'll show it off again here. So we spin, 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 and it's an ungodly amount of damage, guys. Extremely strong. If you pair this with some Core Warrior stuff like the Signet of Might that can make you unblockable, oh, it's very difficult to get away from. And it's kind of the big trick that Berserkers have now for both PvE and the competitive modes, where this thing is doing ridiculous damage. I think I've seen that when you cast this fully buffed and stuff in raid scenarios, the 3 hits together rolls up to like 100k or something totally ridiculous. Maybe Axe 5 can do the same thing now. It's absurd, guys. So, yeah, Greatsword really got a real treat. And thus, you can run the combo of a power Berserker that's on Greatsword plus Axe and enjoy all those fun benefits from both of those. So there you go. That's all of the new skills. That's how they work, you know, sans the underwater ones. We do, of course, have utilities as well now. So our new Primal Burst is called a Primal Burst, which is technically a new category of skill. But down here, you'll see that our new utilities are called Rages. And Rage skills are all about increasing the amount of time that you can berserk for. So what you'll find interesting is when we looked at the druid, they got glyphs, right, which already existed in the game. That was a type of utility skill that got moved over. When we looked at Tempest, we saw they got shouts, which previously warriors had. Well, so the warrior new type of utility skill, these rages, where do they come from? Well, nowhere. The devs actually invented an entirely new type of utility skill specifically for this elite specialization. And it's not something they too often do. So rages, currently the only profession in the entire game that gets to use them. You're looking at it. Maybe some point in the future we'll see necros get rages, but time will tell. So rages increase the amount of time we can spend in Berserk. That's kind of the main thing for all of them, but there are lots of other effects to look at. So first, the heal skill, Blood Reckoning. Heal yourself, gain adrenaline, and recharge all your primal bursts. Heal for a percentage of your outgoing damage, and the skill extends the duration of Berserk mode. So, if you're a Guardian player, you might recognize the meditation heal for Guardian is like this. This skill does a ton of different things, but one of the main points is that after an initial heal, which isn't that much, here's the animation, we now have this effect on us, Blood Reckoning, for a few seconds. You see we've got these glowing hands? While Blood Reckoning's on us, as we hurt people, that actually starts healing us. So again, it's a way of us sustaining through pressuring. So the real beautiful thing to do with this heal skill is not only will it allow us to heal from our damage, but it gives us adrenaline, 10, not 30, 10, and it recharges our primal burst. So what can we do? We can berserk, use our primal burst, heal, use our primal burst. Now, I know I just showed you with Eviscerate that it automatically cools down, but a lot of the other ones don't, right? So Arc Divider does have a cooldown, so I can double cast it using the heal. And on the second one, I'm healing off of that damage. So this is a great skill for getting into Berserk, for accessing more bursts, and the cherry on top of all of that is it's making your Berserk last longer. Instead of lasting 15 seconds, it will now last 17 because this increased the duration by 2. So here, I'll burst, and I'll use this, and then I'll burst again. And what's extra nice is because this extends the duration of berserking, if I'm right about to leave Berserk modes, and I want to squeeze out that last burst, I can heal and do it in time, right? Because this is giving me the extra 2 seconds for the cast of my primal burst. So really versatile heal skill, very aggressive heal skill that just allows you to do lots more damage. So pretty nice. Next, let's take a look here at Wild Blow. So this one I remember on the pre-release the devs were talking about, and I was really excited at the prospect of, but was never really that good in the end. I mean, it is powerful, but for the thing I was excited about. So here, check it out. Lash out with a critical attack that launches your target. The target will... we got to go to an actual enemy to show this, surely. The target will fly backwards, knocking back other foes in their way, and then we gain Fury, and we extend the duration of Berserk mode if it lands. So, the Fury is just like, why is that? There's so much stuff, right, you can get on top. But the idea is this is a hard CC skill, alright? It's a launch. So, launches are some of the most powerful CCs you can have in the game. But even better, while they're flying backwards, if you can line it up to have them hit another target, that target will get flown backwards too. So, here, let's try this, okay? I'm going to pull this Devourer towards this other Devourer. Let's see if we can aggro them both. Come on. No, stay with me. There we go. All right, so I'm going to launch this first Devourer now into the other one. Ready? There we go. And see, he gets pushed back. It's a cool interaction, isn't it? And the way the devs described it initially was that it was like they were projectiles, right? Basically. And it could be so cool for various break bar mechanics and stuff in the game. But nowhere really have I played with this too much before. That's Wild Blow. It is strong. It's great to have hard CC as a utility skill. And, you know, you can load up with lots of these. Wild Blowing into some nasty mace or hammer skills, obviously, is going to be a great choice. You could Wild Blow someone away and then Gunflame them in the face and daze them again or whatever. But that's the idea of the skill. This time, it increases our Berserk mode by 3 seconds. Next, we have Shattering Blow. So, here's how Shattering Blow looks. I got a really crappy camera angle there for you guys. Summon a rock that blocks attacks, then shatter it to send out rock fragments that inflict bleeding on all foes in front of you and also extends duration of Berserk mode. This skill, I feel like, could have originally been designed such that you press the button once and you crouch down, and then you press it again and like explode out. But it all flows as a single button now. So here, I'll show it again. We'll zoom out a bit. See, we sort of crouch down, pull back, create this rock wall in front of us for a very brief moment. I'll slow it down for you guys. Then after that brief moment, and that's the bit where I wonder if the animation Once Upon a Time we could have held, then we fire out in front of ourselves, we shatter it and bleed. So here, I'll do it on this armadillo. You'll see it did a ton of damage to the armadillo, but that's just because he's an ambient creature. It really is more about the bleed. But yeah, while you're blocking for that half second at the start, you are actually genuinely blocking. Not just that, but you reflect missiles too. So if someone was trying to shoot me, I could, you know, if someone was gun flaming me, and I time it right, I could shattering blow at them. We saw that quite a lot in the Heart of Thorns Elite Specializations. Dragon Hunter has an interesting similar mechanic as well at the same time. And so, yeah, that's basically the idea of Shattering Blow. Extends by 2 seconds this time. You also get a little bit of stab, by the way. The stability lasts far longer than the full animation. So I've never really utilized that too much. But very fun. You see both of these skills, how condensed they are and how much they seek to do. That's one of the reasons I actually think that rage skills are some of my favorites of all the elite specializations from Heart of Thorns. Next, let's look at Sundering Leap. So, rage. We leap to a location. We do damage when we land. We inflict conditions on foes in the area. And we extend Berserk mode by a lot this time, okay? So, this time it's 5 seconds of increase. So, this is huge. And the idea is it's an engage, obviously. You'll see we can launch really far away from us. Look at this huge distance we can go. Think of this a lot like Jump Shot on the Engineer, right? So we charge forwards, but unlike Jump Shot, it doesn't have like a packet as you leave. As you land, you slam down, you cripple people, so it's harder for them to get away. You apply vulnerability to people so that they take more damage from you, and then you can hopefully berserk and go ham. Now, this one changed a reasonable amount with the 2019 update, because what rage skills used to do is used to give you adrenaline. It wasn't about extending berserk, it was about gaining adrenaline. But Warrior's got so many mechanics for gaining adrenaline anyway. The heal still gives us a bit. What this used to be is if you sunder and leapt onto someone, it would instantly charge your berserk, and then you could go in and you could hit them. But now you've got to be a little more careful. You get the adrenaline early, and then you go afterwards. I do actually think it's a really strong skill, but the problem is, with the way that the animation plays, it can be a bit slow sometimes. It's not as good at chasing people as really I would want it to be, and sometimes they can escape anyway. If the radius of the strike where you land was a bit higher, I think the skill would be a lot stronger, just so you can apply that cripple a bit more. Like, if I leapt here and still managed to cripple the Devourer, it'd be quite nice. But yeah, you kind of want to run in, you do the damage, you get your vulnerability on, and you can sort of go crazy. So there you have it. And you want to be berserked first. That's the thing as well. Using this as a pure engage, if you use these skills without being in berserk, you kind of lose the value of them extending your berserk mode. So you kind of need to poke and engage a bit. It's better for chasing someone down who's fleeing than it is for starting a fight. And, you know, Warrior's just got so many really high value utility skills. It's really hard to squeeze some of these in. But there you go. That's Sundering Leap. And then finally, we've got an amazing skill, okay? It's called Outrage. So look at this. No cast time. Just a single thing. A cooldown of 10 seconds. So it's a super spammable skill. This is what it is. Ready? Boom. We just do a little flare of fire around us. Every 10 seconds we can do that. Crazy utility skill. This is like a weapon skill almost. So, you know, in how quickly we get it back is what I mean. So this is a fun thing in that this is a real utility piece. And it really is about one thing. Stun breaking. Rage. Break out of stun. And extend the duration of your berserk mode. The extension of your berserk mode increases if you actually did stun break. So I could just spam this for free to berserk a bit longer, right? I could cast it, and if I did it right, maybe I could cast it twice or something again, extra 2 seconds. Or I can use it as an actual stun break that comes up super quick. And look at that. If we break a stun with it, we can berserk for 5 seconds longer. That's a long time. That's paired off with the other longest one, Sundering Leap. So it's all about stun breaking. You might think, well, WP, is that really that good? Don't forget that if you're a defense warrior, you can run the Rousing Resilience trait, which gives you a massive heal whenever you stun break and toughness boost, and you can proc that over and over and over again. But the true value of Outrage will become obvious when we look at the Elite. So, the Elite is Headbutt. Again, a returning Guild Wars 1 skill. Again, it's not an Elite that's about a giant nuke of damage. it's more utility oriented. So check it out. Rage. Stun your target and stun yourself. And I think the Guild Wars 1 skill had this kind of interaction in it. So, and stun yourself. Gain adrenaline and extend your Berserk duration if you hit. So, there's two ways you can use Berserk. One is to enter Berserk mode, because look at this. You get 30 adrenaline when you cast this. So here, I'm going to cast it on the Devourer. Boom, we headbutted him, and we've immediately got all of our damage available. Arc Divider was up, and we can go crazy, right? Straight away, it's all there. You get 30 adrenaline for hitting that. But you self-stun yourself. So what do you do about that? Well, one thing you can do is run Outrage. And Outrage will allow you to headbutt your target. We can't do it to... Well, I guess we can. We'll headbutt the Armadillo, stun ourselves, and then immediately Outrage and break out. Now, what's happened there, guys? Well, what I've done by headbutting and then outraging, I've extended my Berserk duration by 7 seconds between the two skills straight away. And I've stunned my target. You know how we stun each other? I stun myself for a second. I stun him for 3. That's a long stun. That's like a skull crack, isn't it? Maybe it's not a full-on skull crack, but it's a heavy, heavy stun that if they have no way of getting out of, now they can't even do anything while you suddenly have access to all your biggest skills. So that's one way to use it, to go into Berserk mode. Or the other way to use it is what I just described, which is extending the duration. So you can fight the mower for a bit, build your adrenaline up as much as possible. The game here is to get enough adrenaline but not have them die. Then I can go into Berserk, and headbutt whilst I'm in there. And now I've just got so much duration now. This thing's going to be lasting for ages, right? I'm just going to be hanging around in Berserk for so long where I can really sustain myself. So that's headbutt. Now, well, I was talking earlier about the satisfaction of Mace. What was really fun back in the day was like headbutt someone, Berserk, skull grinder them, and just do all these fantastic like little combos where you swing from the headbutt into your other CCs, just loading them up with conditions and damage and giving yourself lots of stuff. If you look, headbutt does a lot of damage too, but it's single target, it's quite close range. Let's see the headbutt again here. We sort of just launch forward and we smash our head forward. Maybe the headpiece fits really well with that. And so, yeah, I really like these last two skills that we talked about in terms of they break away from what I traditionally think of utility skills as being good for, you know, which is fast cooling down things. And so there you have it. That's your rage skills. That's your primal burst. That's really the makeup of Berserker. Now, there are some other really fun things that we can look at, though, when we take a gander at the traits, which are largely quite simple. And I do really appreciate that, especially with the 2019 update. But you'll notice some really nice synergies. So let's first of all look at the top line, which is all about damage. Okay, top line is all about flat damage, middle line is more about condition damage, bottom line is more about brawling and sustain. And you might think, well, hold on, I thought it was about losing a ton of toughness. It's not about sustain. Largely it's not, but we'll get to that in a second. So the top line, damage, flat damage, check it out. Your first choice is you could choose to have always 5 seconds longer duration. So you can see here now how if you wanted to, you could make a build that is all about rage skills, and this trait here, Smash Brawler, meaning you're berserking for just ages and ages and ages and ages and ages. And you can play sort of a rage extension, adrenaline extension style build. Reminds me a bit of Gunzerking in Borderlands 2. Well, there you have it. Next, you've got Blood Reaction, very simple trait. A percentage of your precision is given as a bonus to your ferocity. So your crit chance is becoming crit damage. It's 7%, but when you're in Berserk mode, it's as high as 14%. So ferocity is obviously a brilliant stat to build on a damagey spec, so this is therefore a brilliant trait, and it's a fun one. People in PvE, we've got to love those flat modifiers, right? And then lastly, the Grandmaster trait. Look at this. Bloody Raw. This has actually changed a bit. It used to be you would taunt when entering Berserk, so you could do kind of fun stuff before this update, where you'd headbutt Berserk, and they'd be stunned, and then they'd be taunted, and then you would skull grinder them, and so on, and you just keep them CC'd the whole way through. That taunt's no longer there. Honestly, I could do a huge discussion about why that taunt wasn't even that great, but we'll leave it there. It's simply this now. 20% damage while berserking. A 20% modifier, that's exactly what we'd expect from a Grandmaster slot. That's immense, guys. It's huge. And if, as you've noticed from the top line, you've extended your berserking duration as well, that's massive. That's how the numbers can get really high. So that's the top line. Really simple. Not much more to say. Let's look at the middle line, the condition line. So Last Blaze. Whenever we use rages, we now inflict burning 2. So if I mouse over all of these, you'll see now written in blue, there's burn. So if I use Shattering Blow, not only do I bleed with this, I burn with this. Not only when I Blood Reckoning do I heal myself, but I put a bit of burning out. I'll note this is point blank AoE burning. So with the Shattering Blow, if I hit someone at range with it, it won't necessarily burn them all the way out there. It only burns around me. But stuff like Sundering Leap, where is it? Here it is. You know, when I jump over, I can burn, cripple, and vuln all at once now. Honestly, I think this trait could be a little bit more interesting, but it is just an adept slot, right? So I think that's fair. You would usually expect a trait like this to reduce the cooldown of utility skills as well, but it doesn't on this case. Next, we've got Heat the Soul. So this is your weapon-oriented one. This is for the torch, which we haven't had equipped for a while, so let's get Wild Abandon back on here now. So this is your torch trait, which again is more condition oriented. So straight up, gain condition damage all the time, even when I'm not on torch. When I'm on greatsword, I have extra condition damage if I want, or more importantly, like longbow. But it's 120 with the torch, then it doubles with the torch. So you get another 120 when the torch is out, and it reduces the cooldown of your torch skills. So you have a lot higher uptime on being a walking flaming field that continuously does damage to people, and you can get your condition cleanse from this back, and you can harass people at range back with this more frequently. So nice simple thing, Heat the Soul. And finally the Grandmaster. This is called King of Fires, and it's actually one of my favorite ideas within Berserker, but is kind of not strong enough at the moment for the competitive formats at least. So let's have a look at this. This is a Grandmaster that means, first of all, our burns last longer, 33% longer. That's a whopping boost to our burns, which is brilliant because there's a lot of burn on Berserker. You'll notice it's very burn-themed. That's why I went with the burning-themed armor here. So that's nice. The modifier to longer burns is brilliant. But listen to how cool this other thing is. Gain Fire Aura whenever you crit someone, and whenever you use a Berserker skill, you detonate Fire Auras, damaging and burning nearby foes. So there's a lot to get through here. First of all, I'll just show you. When I crit this Dust Mite by throwing an axe at him. Oh, we never got a crit. Let's try again. There we go. I have a Fire Aura around me now, as you can see. Now, with the Fire Aura, when I use, say, this Torch skill here, I can explode it to not only do Blaze Breaker damage, I can also hit him with another skill called King of Fires, the explosion of the Fire Aura. Now, that's brilliant. I love when Elite Specializations take regular mechanics, like Fire Auras that all professions can get, and now I get a special extra thing. I can blow up my Fire Aura. Now, blowing up a Fire Aura means you don't get the benefit of the Fire Aura anymore, which is, you know, you splash burning out on people and stuff. So, it's got to have a really good effect on it, right? And it kind of does. Look at this. We do 3 stacks of burn on our target for a good amount of burning damage, which is being extended by the trait itself. So, you get a load of self-synergy here. It provides Fire Auras for you that you can blow up, that provides burn for you, that you're extending the duration of. Pretty nice. And this opens up some really amazing and fun combos that I was alluding to at the start of this video. So, for example, if we run Sword with our Flames of War, when I use Flames of War, the 5, now I can Sword Leap in, which creates the Fire Aura, which I can instantly detonate with another Torch skill. And look, I just did 7 burn to that. I'm not even on a burning build, and we did a lot of burning damage there, right? So you get all these cool self-synergies where suddenly your skills are interplaying with one another in ways that you hadn't thought of. Now, that combo I just showed wasn't actually necessarily that good. What you'd really want to do is start the fight so you get the free Fire Aura from the crit, blow that up, say, with a utility skill, then do the combo, and blow that one up, and you didn't see, but right as the Moa was dying there, he suddenly had a ton of burning on him. So you can do fun stuff like that, right? I think for King of Fires, if it was stronger, could lead to some really interesting interactions between the Berserker Elite Specialization from Heart of Thorns and the Tempest Elite Specialization from Heart of Thorns, because Tempest has ways of sharing Fire Auras out en masse. So the Tempest supports the Berserker and keeps him alive, giving him lots of auras that he keeps blowing up on people. How fun is that idea? The problem with it is, though, that this only really works with condition damage playstyles right now, and that's not always the best fit, depending on what you're doing in the game. And it's just not potent enough to really push that synergy and that interaction. What I find really interesting about King of Fires is read the tooltip very closely. It says Berserker skills detonate Fire Aura. damaging and burning nearby foes. It suggests that there should be flat damage on there too. Not just burn, but flat damage. But the flat damage has never actually been implemented. I don't know, a bug or an oversight. Either the tooltip is an oversight or the implementation of the skill is an oversight. I don't know which one the devs really went with. But I think if there was a bit of flat damage on that, you could run some interesting playstyles where you like a powery thing that mixes up. Of course, now it's juxtaposed with 20% flat damage, so it's kind of hard to justify forevermore. And they kind of made it a bit icky, but it's a fun idea for a skill that a Grandmaster trait that I really hope the devs sort of keep pushing, because it's a very, very, very interesting interaction that they have there. I'll lastly note, it says Berserker skills detonate fire aura. That's kind of a fun thing. Well, what is a Berserker skill? You'll note they didn't say Rage skills. They didn't say Primal Burst skills. They didn't say Torch skills, which are all different types of Berserker skills. It's just Berserker skills in general. That whole bucket of Berserker skills, they're the ones that proc that. And that's interesting. You don't see Elite Specializations do that too much, you know, where all the various aspects of the Elite Specialization are banded together for one trait. Well, on King of Fires, that's exactly what we see. Alright, so now, last but not least, we can look at the bottom line, which is more brawler-oriented. So, again, Berserker is about bringing the big damage, but there are quality of life options for you. Starting off with Savage Instinct, which is a new trait, really, as of the big updates. Activating Berserk mode will break stun and reduce incoming damage. Now, this trait's amazing, okay? It says reduce incoming damage, but let's actually look at the specifics. You get the effect Feel No Pain, which is 100% incoming damage reduced, okay? It's like you get Endure Pain, guys, for free. Well, not for free, but, you know, at the cost of a trait when you enter Berserk mode. You can just be invulnerable. So now, as soon as I enter, when I'm doing my arc dividers and stuff, people can't even hurt me for 2 seconds. And I know it doesn't sound like much, but that's all it takes to do a big arc divider or something, right? And do your big burst to get your gun flame out. And what's even better is it breaks stuns too. So now I can, that's right, headbutt, stun break with the enter of Berserk, go invulnerable, and do all my stuff while they're sitting there stunned. Incredible. Okay, so really fun trait. Love this one. Next, Dead or Alive. Receiving fatal damage while you're berserking will end the berserk and heal you. Incoming healing is also just always increased now. So, the incoming healing increase is an interesting one. It means we're just healed for 10% more whenever we heal ourselves or our friends heal us. You'll actually notice that the Necromancer class, which is very similar to what Berserker is trying to do. Necromancer is all about, you know, big, like, damage and need support and so on. Well, Berserker is very similar to that now, right? And both actually have a trait that they can pick up that means when someone's trying to heal them, they heal them for more, right? So that you can get that help from your allies more. Here you have it, Dead or Alive. But also that fascinating thing, too. While I'm berserking, if I die right now, if this mower manages to kill me, I won't die. I'll come back to life instantly. I get a free instant revive and a bit of health, and it will just kick me out of Berserk mode. So it's like the anger of being alive has managed to hold me in it just for a little bit longer, and I get a free heal of 5,220 health. And so that's brilliant as well. People run that competitively at the moment because it is that last gasp that keeps you going. And you can see now as well where Dead or Alive plus, say, Smash Brawler and mixing and matching the lines can be really fun because you want to be in Berserk a long time so that you've got a good chance of proccing Dead or Alive. This is actually sort of a reimagined version of what existed on Berserker before the 2019 update, but there you have it. And last but not least, we have our final Grandmaster, the Brawling one. This is called Eternal Champion. So what this does is it gives us toughness while we're berserking, and it gives us stability and might whenever we stun break. So 2 different traits, basically, in one. Now, the toughness while berserking is 300 toughness. So what does that mean? Let's look back at this minor, remember. While we're in Berserk, we should be on less than 300 toughness. That's like the downside to berserking. But you can pick up this Grandmaster to remove the downside. So the downside disappears now. And, you know, if you feel like that's too punishing for you to be 300 toughness left. So it's not just removing the downside, it's giving you this other trait kind of at the same time, which is we get stability and might when stun breaking. And what does that mean? We're stun breaking when we enter Berserk. So now when I headbutt Berserk, I'm invulnerable with stability. So I can't be damage countered and I can't be CC counted as soon as I enter here. But that's not just on the stun break from entering. That's any stun break. So if I outrage at any point, if I use any core warrior stun breaks, if I use shake it off or balance stance or anything, I will gain stability. And again, that's got some nice combinations with, say, if you go defense and pick up rousing resilience, which is the toughness and health whenever you stun break. And, you've got these brilliant synergies working through here. I'm not sure if I mentioned, but one of the obvious synergies here is Berserker's power. It's a trait that says Berserker's power, and it buffs your damage to a ludicrous degree as soon as you enter Berserk. To enter Berserk is to use a T3 burst, which triggers 21% damage, and then you could run Bloody Roar, which is also 20% damage, so, the modifiers just go mental, right, with the class at the moment, so, really fun. I love the way that Berserker integrates itself with the other stuff in the profession. It's not like some of the other elite specs where it feels a bit like, oh, it's really all about the new skills and mechanics, and it's kind of all centered around there. This really hooks into the existing class in some beautiful ways, and, you've got that big trade-off of 300 less toughness, but you can even sort of try to counter that if you like with the trait at the cost of some of the other traits. And it's just a really fun class. There's maybe some efficacy things that I'd like to see the devs work on, particularly with some of the other Primal bursts at the moment. But overall, it's really fun. I love what 2019 did with it, and I'm really happy to be able to show it to you guys. So there you have it. That's the next elite specialization shown. We continue to march on. A couple more mediums and heavies to show off, including some of my favorites in the whole expansion. So I do hope you guys will stay tuned for that. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you for the next one very soon. There'll be a link in the description to the playlist. Please feel free to click that. You'll see all the other specialization introductions I've done so far. You can learn a lot more about the game if you go for it. I'll see you guys on the next one very soon.